Hello everyone, how's it going? And welcome to the Just Chatting Gaming News and Trailers. This is going to be a short one because we only have a little bit of news and only about 3 trailers or so. So let's jump right in. Back at E3, we saw the first couple of trailers for the Suicide Squad game, and that has now been delayed into 2023. Frankly, that's not really a surprise for me because DC has another Gotham Knights coming out this year, and I really don't think that they would want to double up on their DC games all for fall releases. So it's probably good that that one is getting delayed into 2023. So yeah, good for them. Next up, we have a little bit of an update on Ghostwire Tokyo. Apparently it is getting a March release date, and there's actually going to be an event for this tomorrow, and we probably will cover that on the channel. This is like a really weird game. We saw it at, again, like an E3 style event or Summer Game Fest like a solid 2 years ago. Like, I can barely remember what that game even is. I know a lot of people are excited about it, so I guess we'll see what it is tomorrow. Actually, it says here back at E3 2019. So, yeah. Next up, we have our review thread for Dying Light 2 Stay Human. Currently on Metacritic, it is sitting at a 77 with 33% positive and 12 mixed 1 negative. The critic embargo lifted today. The streamer / content creator embargo released 2 hours ago at the time that I'm shooting this video. So it'd be interesting to see the difference between the critical review and us normal people review. 2 things that I have heard about this pretty much across all the reviews is they say apparently the main story is very mediocre, and a lot of the dialogue and voice acting is also very mediocre. But I guess other than those 2 things, if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. So that's pretty interesting. And then the final story of the day is the Tiny Tina's Wonderlands has officially gone gold, so that game is done. And that doesn't release until like March something. And actually, speaking of Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, IGN has released a 5-minute first look, and so we're actually going to watch that right now. Maybe they'll actually give the release date in this. Also, this video is presented in 4K, so here we go.
A massive skeleton army is sieging the city!
I should mention here real quick that if you've never seen this game, they are essentially doing a D&D style Borderlands game. Back in, I believe it was Borderlands 2, they did a DLC called Tiny Tina's Dungeon something or other. I forget the name off the top of my head, where Tiny Tina was your bunker master, and she essentially played D&D with your character. This is a spin-off of that, and it's going to be the first Borderlands game with like actual character creation and classes and that sort of thing. So let's check it out.
Melding of tabletop RPG and Borderlands in Tiny Tina's Wonderland almost feels like a Pimp My Ride meme. You like RPGs and your RPG-based looter shooters? Because at its core, Borderlands has always been heavily influenced by role-playing games, both the tabletop and video game varieties. The visible damage counters as you unleash a clip or 300 into your enemies is a direct nod to the damage counters in games like Final Fantasy. And the Gearbox main offices in Texas have an entire room set aside with what might be the greatest tabletop RPG setup I've ever seen.
Really?
Giving Tiny Tina her own DLC, which, by the way, is standalone as of last November, as well as a spin-off game with Wonderlands, feels like the perfect encapsulation of the DNA of Borderlands as a whole. And then they went and added spells and melee attacks.
You're stuck on this side! What do you do?
I think it's obvious. We seduce the drawbridge.
Greetings, inanimate object. Would you like to engage in physical congress?
That's pretty
I'm
funny.
Not even gonna make you roll for that. The drawbridge, it takes your flavor, baby.
Works every time.
Seduce the
first
drawbridge.
big difference between this and your ordinary, non-imaginary Borderlands campaign is the addition of spells to your arsenal. In some ways, they replace grenades from the mainline series, but they have such a distinct look and feel that they easily differentiate themselves from the grenades you're used to chucking at psychos. For one, they have a cooldown period rather than a set inventory, so you can cast spells to your heart's content and never need to fill up on ammo like you do with grenades. You just need to let your spells recharge. There are weapons and items that can cut down on the cooldown time, and you can link moves and spells together and create all sorts of chaos. I mean really like the way spells add to combat. While there aren't healing spells per se, there are dark magic spells you can cast that feed your hurting and hungry Fate Maker with hit points while doling out damage to whatever fanciful baddie happens to be on the receiving end of your arcana. I was equipped on my playthrough with a meteor spell that looked as good as the damage it dealt. A portal opened above the head of the enemy I was targeting, from which a torrent of flaming meteors rained down their damage. This would happen while I was also unloading clip after clip into them. It just felt awesome, is what I'm saying.
It looks really good.
But it doesn't just stop with the spells either. Melee attacks in Wonderlands are more important than ever before. In fact, they're no longer last-ditch efforts to cause some up-close damage like they tend to be in most first-person shooters.
Come, friends, to battle and glory!
Melee weapons use the same RNG modular system as the guns, so that means you get different buffs and bonuses depending on the rarity of the melee weapon you find. With the exception of the two-handed swords, which have extended reach, triggering a melee attack glides you towards an enemy. In other words, you can attack them before they're in range to attack you. You can therefore approach a group of enemies and chain your attacks together, gliding with deadly precision between them. Depending on your melee weapon boosts, this could lead to bonus effects like decreased spell cooldown. It puts the badass in bunkers of badass.
I feel magical! I hope you made your peace.
None of the attacks felt like they overshadowed the others, although guns are still the main draw for Borderlands. Instead, they work together to make combat feel extremely fast and tight. There's no clunkiness, or at least not in the loadout I was given to use. I should point out, I was given something of an OP character to play, something creative director Matt Cox told me was done in the interest of letting me try out more types of attacks. In the final version, the mission I played is a little too early to have the kind of level of weapons I was given. That being said, I kind of look forward to building to the level of fluidity I experienced during my preview. When encountering a big old group of enemies, I felt a sense.
I feel like I should point out that what he said right there is something that has become more common in critic reviews, is they will give the critics a build that is much stronger than what it's supposed to be, because it makes them feel really good and powerful, and that way they give the game a higher review score.
Sense of excitement rather than
Generally
the
speaking.
apprehension I sometimes felt in previous Borderlands games where I was worried my collection of
So the good reporters are smart enough to look past that.
weapons wasn't going to cut it. I wish I'd gotten the chance to play more because there was so much to see and do in just the one level I played through during my brief time with Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. The combat felt great, and I'm looking forward to the final game where I can mix and match guns and spells and melee weapons and open chest after tasty chest. My biggest takeaway from the demo is Tiny Tina's Wonderlands feels so very right in so many ways, and I'm very excited for the final game and all of its ridiculous fantasy tropes, seemingly endless spell and gun combinations, and, of course, opportunities for loot.
As the last lifeless skellyman clatters to the cobblestones, realize you've done it! The undead horde has been defeated!
For more on Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, stay tuned for more exclusive IGN First coverage all February long.
I just think it's going to be hilarious listening to Ashley Birch narrate this thing. So yeah, there you go. That's Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Next up, we have this trailer for Guild Wars 2. And I have no idea what this is even about. Anybody in chat even play this game? Oh, hold on. You're getting ahead there. There we go. They're adding fishing. Or maybe it already has. Jeez. It's a little bit loud.
Ambassador's dispatch. Queen's eyes only. The Empire of Cantha is not what we remember. They are the most powerful nation on Tyria, thanks to their Jade tech. And they don't trust us.
They're robots.
We have to show them that we're on their side.
Dynamic ways to travel. Okay. Customize your guild hall. There's a whale in the sky.
The Aether Blades are back. Now they're planning something big in Cantha.
That's a Lalafell.
If we don't stop them, they'll plunge Tyria into war.
Yeah, you really don't hear people talk about Guild Wars 2 very much. The old siege turtles.
Everything Dragon's Watch has fought for. It all comes down to this. The secrets of Cantha. The secrets of the dragons. We have to uncover them all. Before it's too late.
I mean, that actually looks alright. They're launching that in February? Well, nobody's playing that. Why would you do that? Oh boy. Final trailer of the day is another class trailer for Lost Ark. I think after this we have one more maybe. So let's check out this one. Maybe this will sway me into playing something different. Let's find out.
For you today. Specifically, we'll be taking a closer look at the Warriors. This is sponsored by Amazon. They asked me to give you guys an overview of the 3 Warrior classes to try to help you figure out which one of these might be right for you. So let's get right into it. With the Western launch of Lost Ark, the Warrior archetype will have 3 subclasses for you to choose from: the Berserker, the Paladin, and the Gunlancer. Now, each of these are primarily melee focused, as you might assume. There are a few ranged abilities, but for the most part, you are meant to be out on the front lines, dishing out damage and helping your team. The great news is that each warrior subclass excels in multiple roles in the game. For both PvE and PvP, any of these are going to be a pretty strong choice. Whatever you're planning to focus on, you really can't go wrong playing one of the warriors. Starting us off is the Berserker. This is the first class that I was initially drawn to. He carries a massive sword and he swings it really hard. Now, the Berserker is a top tier burst damage class. You're really mainly focused on lining up your abilities to try to dish out a ton of damage in a small window. Now, while strong alone, Berserkers especially excel with just the tiniest bit of support to help offset some of their weaknesses, and at that point, you become a damage-dealing machine. For the Berserker class identity, you have a Fury meter that will fill up when you attack, and once it is full, you can hit Z to enter burst mode. Once in burst mode, you just become a crazy god. You attack 20% faster and have a 30% increased crit rate. On top of that, you can hit Z a second time to activate Bloody Rush. This is a skill that slashes for massive damage, then stabs forward, dealing more damage and knocking enemies back. When you first start playing this class, things are on the slower side for the Berserker. That's definitely the case. They've got some fairly long cooldowns, and sometimes you might be left waiting on abilities. As things progress, things really speed up for the class, and it becomes much more fluid. fluid. On the PvE side, you are one of the strongest burst damage classes. For that reason, you're great for chunking health bars. Also, you've got debuffs on enemies as well as buffs for your allies that just across the board will help boost your party damage. Having a Berserker in your group is just going to mean you're dealing a lot more damage to the boss. In terms of PvP, they are also very strong. Really in that team setting though, if you have a group that can help peel and set up engagements, you're really able to wipe up players pretty quickly. But they do need a little bit of support. But with that, they really become a powerhouse. So,
I mean, if they're able to deal out that much damage, they must have a weakness. What's the weakness?
No, if you like hitting things hard, I think the Berserker across the board is a pretty good choice. Next up, we've got the Paladin, wielders of the light and a one-handed sword. Paladins are kind of this offensive healer. They deal okay damage. It's not quite on par with the pure DPS classes, but they can definitely help out, and they are the best damage dealing support. Actually, that's their main role, though, as a buff and support class. In fact, the Paladin is one of only 2 supports that are playable in the game. So while you're dealing damage, you're primarily there to aid your allies with shields as well as a passive heal. As a paladin, the class identity is this piety meter. It will fill up when in combat and dealing damage, and once it's full, you've got 2 different abilities you can choose from. There is Sacred Executioner, which increases the attack range of basic attacks and punish skills by 30% while also increasing the damage of those attacks and abilities. Or you can choose to activate Holy Aura, which creates this 12 meter aura around your character, increasing all party member damage by 10%. So basically your choice is a stronger buff for yourself or a buff across the board for your teammates. And that's really what you're likely to do in a group setting. Now, while leveling, you know, you're certainly able to hold your own. You can clear the content, you can make it to the story, and you can do a fair bit of these solo things. Your damage isn't that bad, but certainly come end game, expect to be a support. That is the role of a paladin. You are there to help out your team, helping them survive and do more damage. In PvE, paladins are highly sought after because, again, they are one of only 2 supports in the game. So any party is going to want either you or a bard in their group pretty much for all of the content.
Wait, did you say bard?
You're not going to be a strong damage dealer here, though. I have to reiterate that. The class just does not scale well compared to pure DPS classes. Your strength is your supporting skills, your shields, and your healing. However, in terms of PvP, with the way scaling works in Lost Ark, the Paladin is actually a real damage threat on top of all of their powerful support skills. So in addition to your shields and your healing, you've got some strong peeling and damage dealing capabilities. So if you want to feel like a holy warrior dealing some damage, but primarily helping your team, I think you would be happy with the Paladin. And last but not least, we have got the Gun Lancer. Now, at first glance, this looks like a tank, and it is the tankiest class in the game. The truth is, though, it's just a super durable damage dealer. It keeps up with every other damage class while also being tanky and supporting the team. I think the best way to think of it is instead of like a glass cannon, you are a rock. You deal boatloads of damage while just standing still rather than like hopping around evading damage. No, you just sit there, you take the damage, and you deal it back in return. This has actually become one of my favorite classes since playing it, and it looks like a strong contender for my main pick. One unique mechanic for the Gun Lancer is that instead of a forward dodge or dash, which all of the other classes have, Gun Lancers have this short range backstep. It's also the evade with the shortest cooldown, so you can dodge damage more frequently than other classes. For the class identity, Gun Lancers have this shield meter. It will fill up passively as well as every time you attack an enemy. And then at any point, no matter how full the meter is, you can activate one of 2 skills. There is Defensive Stance. This surrounds you with a shield that absorbs incoming attacks, depleting your shield meter instead of your health. The only drawback is you move 50% slower. On the plus side, it completely ignores enemy attacks, mechanics, gives you push immunity, so you can just sit there and not flinch. You can ignore mechanics with this skill. It's crazy. Your other skill is the Battlefield Shield. This will consume all of your available shield meter at the time. It lets you move instantly to any location and then smash down damaging enemies while also giving you a shield proportional to the consumed shield meter, as well as granting push immunity to your team and redirecting any damage they take to you for 5 seconds. For all of these reasons and more, Gun Lancers are highly valued in PvE group content. They can just make fights so much easier. They can distract the boss, they deal deal strong, consistent damage, and they keep the boss faced away from the other DPS, which in turn makes their job
like the old Merc bubble, yeah.
Gun Lancers offer the group shields, they offer a cleanse and damage redirect abilities. All of this will help offset mistakes. They've got that taunt skill that can even skip some mechanics. They can ignore mechanics themselves thanks to defensive stance, and they're also pretty good at clearing trash. They've got a lot of abilities that deal massive increased damage to trash mobs. In the PvP side of things, they are really good at peeling and disrupting enemies and just in general supporting your team. In general, you are there to make the other team's life a lot more difficult so that your DPS can take them out. Currently, the Gun Lancer is my favorite class, and yeah, this is probably what I'm going to play at launch.
Interesting.
So there you go. That is an overview of the 3 warrior classes available for the Western release of Lost Ark. As I said at the top, you really can't go wrong here, whether you want to be a burst damage god, a shield and healing support, or an immovable rock that also hits hard. Any of these warrior classes are a pretty good choice. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you in the next much for...
I don't know. In that grouping, I don't think the warrior is for me. I'm still going to either be, and I forget the exact subclass, but there was an assassin and a gun, like pistolier. So I'm going to be one of those two, I think. If I did do this one, I'd go paladin, I think. I do like my support classes, and I think that would be a lot of fun. Maybe, or I guess we have to see the bard. I don't think I've seen any videos on a bard. I actually didn't even know that was a class in this game. So that's pretty crazy. Well, for those who are watching on YouTube, that's going to go ahead and do it. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.